Florian Albert, or unworthy of untying the laces of the Magic Magyars? Just how good is Dominik Szoboszlai? As we can see from Szoboszlai's stats, he isn't a perennial running merchant who suits an orthodox wide role where he's constantly squaring up his fullback 1v1 and looking to beat them regularly. He doesn't run enough with the ball or have enough consistent close control or flair to match the output of an elite winger. However, if we look at it from a different lens and view him as an inside forward or an attacking midfielder, his dribbling in these central areas is at times verging on generational. He's got a brilliant blend of athleticism, agility, multi-directional dribbling and patches of flair, including step-overs, rolling the foot over the ball, which most attacking midfielders, bar perhaps a João Felix, would struggle to match. So that makes him especially dangerous in transition when he can burst through enemy lines who are too far advanced and wrong foot opponents before playing a delicate through ball or strike the ball when his opponent is off balance. He reminds me a bit of a Grealish and a Bale in that his build allows him to eat up yards powerfully and maintain his stride length over longer distances. Statistically, Szoboszlai's goal threat numbers are not elite yet. Now, it may be concerning that his numbers are not elite in the Bundesliga, and it begs the question, how is he then going to transfer to the EPL and be even more productive than what he is in the Bundesliga? But he's 22 years of age and his goal scoring will continue to improve. Based on the eye test, he's got a phenomenal range of shot techniques from finesse to outside of the foot to hitting the valve and knuckleballing it. In particular, it's that knuckleball finish which is his speciality. It's awe-inspiring when he gets it right. He generates a lot of natural power. He's got a strong build which allows him to hit through the very centre of the ball and produce unnatural swerve and dip, reminiscent of a prime Cristiano, but I'd argue that Szoboszlai has even more control of the technique and looks less likely to break down as his career progresses. Now, in terms of weaknesses, I'd say he doesn't have a great deal of goals coming from that weak foot. Now, we've seen some good finishes with the left, but he prefers to check back onto his right, and he often utilises the outside of the foot technique in terms of crossing through ball situations, which hints at the fact that he doesn't massively fancy his left foot. But then again, I have seen him hit some longer passes with the weak foot. So consequently, I wouldn't rule him out making it a better weapon. I think his multi-directional changes when he's dribbling are screaming out for a world-class weak foot to accompany them. Szoboszlai has the ability to pick out passes from wider positions into the box, and that explains his high level of accuracy for crosses. He doesn't just put in the balls for the sake of it. He's got more of a midfielder's mindset, a bit like how a Mason Mount or Bruno Fernandes, when they drift out wide, they look for passes into the box rather than just whipping the ball in. At the moment, I wouldn't say his crossing from wide positions is as audaciously brilliant as a Kevin De Bruyne, and technically he doesn't hit the ball with the same level of whip as a Trent or a Beckham, so I wouldn't classify him as top tier in terms of his crossing of the ball from open play situations, but he's efficient and generally impactful. I'd say where his crossing truly stands out is in set piece situations, but we will touch upon that later. Now, when he's playing down the left, he generally favours the Trivela cross, but I have seen examples of whipped weak foot crosses to the far post. So rather like his shooting, there isn't a large body of work, but there's enough glimpses to suggest that his weak foot delivery is not going to be non-existent or a liability. Szoboszlai is not your natural wide player who almost waits for the play to come to him. Hence, he's perceived as more of a midfielder. Compared to De Bruyne, Bruno, he's a lot safer in possession and he's not always looking to progress the game. Quite often, he moves off the flank to act as a backboard for the man in possession, providing 1-2s to help alleviate the pressure on his teammates. Now, that is useful, but at times it can lead to an abdication of responsibility in the build-up phase, failing to progress the game in deeper areas, even when there's an opportunity to turn his man and find a forward pass. I'd say it's less of an issue for Hungary, where he seems to take on more responsibility to force the issue even deeper on the pitch. So it may be a purely tactical issue, although I do feel he needs to technically demonstrate more in terms of twists and turns and more clever passes when he's back to goal in his own Szoboszlai's killer passing has been overblown by the wider media. It's good, it's efficient, but does he have the vision of the top tier 10s of the past? No. Does he have that feel for a killer pass like a Kevin De Bruyne, produce enough output like a Bruno Fernandes? At the moment, no. I think he will continue to go from strength to strength and the assists generated will go up for sure, but the difficulty level of the passes I've seen, in general, they don't blow my mind. I think most of them are standard passes I'd expect a world-class attacking midfielder to execute easily. I have seen glimpses of his vision and some glimpses of higher level technique in execution of passes from deeper areas, but overall I don't think there's enough creative footage to suggest it veers into generational territory. But if he could make those type of passes his norm rather than the exception, then he will start pushing into that higher end Cam territory. On a positive note, they say that simple football is the hardest to execute, and he does make it look very simple in terms of how he times his through balls into the stride of his teammates, and he always has his head up on the run, but I'd be lying if I said that he was substantially ahead of, say, James Maddison in that regard from open play.
In die stabile und konsequente.
Drauf, Werner bleibt erstmal drauf. Wir haben das im Blick.
In terms of his long passing, Szoboszlai's long passing stats look incredible. Hits a lot of long passes and is still able to produce a 70% accuracy rate. Now, if we delve into the eye test, it becomes apparent that the stats are slightly inflated. The difficulty level of his passes is not particularly high, produces a lot of simple switches of play, and they don't always tend to progress the play, and they're a tad loopy in terms of execution. For example, Lavia is a player who has a much better long pass, McAllister also, because both of these players, they perform tougher level of passes, horizontal or vertical, the zip and the weight of the pass is spot on. Their passes feel probing and penetrative. Szoboszlai is happy to lift passes in the final third and pick out players, but it's usually safer passes, which in fairness still takes a good degree of composure and vision, but it's not groundbreaking. Now on to a significant weakness of Szoboszlai's game, his heading. Now the stats feel inflated because of course he's being compared here to other attacking midfielders who also struggle in this regard. He's a typical attacking midfielder who lacks that aerial presence and lacks, for example, Gerrard's ability to effectively compete in the air. And despite his frame, he's outfought quite regularly, outjumped quite regularly. His timing on headers is quite questionable, and he presents a non-existent aerial goal threat majority of the time. And I think it's a shame because of his dynamism, his movement. I think he could really be a force to be reckoned with in the air, but whilst he may carry himself like a Cristiano, he's nowhere near a Ronaldo in the aerial stakes. So that kind of removes what could potentially be a key source of goals for him. Now, we don't usually cover set pieces on our videos, but it's such a fundamental part of Szoboszlai's games that I felt it merited his own section. Now, just starting with his corners and his delivery from set pieces. His corners in particular are immense. Perfect blend of whip, pace, precision. They feel laser-like and they're a nightmare to deal with. Now, just breaking down the technique, it's a very compact swing, uses the instep almost like a Luiz or a Drogba taking a free kick, and generates a sort of knuckleball dip combined with in-swing, and the in-swing comes from that instep. And his in-swing corners are a bigger threat than his out-swing corners, and you know what, they're both pretty good, and I think the Premier League needs to be aware of this. Liverpool's set-piece game just went up a level. Now, from direct free kicks for Leipzig, we haven't seen many outrageous hits, but there's been glimpses of his knuckleball techers. Now, for Hungary, we've seen some outrageous strikes reminiscent of Ronaldo versus Portsmouth. And if that's a sign of what's to come, I think this kid has the potential to become arguably the game's most deadliest set-piece threat. From penalties, he's also deadly. Hits the ball precise with power, very Cristiano Ronaldo-esque. Not a particularly finesse, flary type of penalty or a crazy stutter. Just very efficient and rather like Rashford, Ronaldo, just arrows into the corner. One of Szoboszlai's endearing traits and what makes him tailor-made for that home crowd at Anfield, and Jurgen Klopp for that matter, is his work rate. This is no fancy Dan attacking midfielder. When he loses the ball, rather like a Wayne Rooney, he hunts for it like a heat-seeking missile in the desire to make up for his error. In wider positions, he tracks his man well and rarely leaves his fullback exposed or outnumbered. So he's very reliable and disciplined tactically. Weakness-wise, 1v1 defending leaves a lot to be desired. He can be skinned because he can be quite flat-footed when he's facing up to an attacker 1v1. In terms of his tackling in general, I think his technique is okay. He's willing to throw himself about, but I feel there's more work to do to convert this natural courage and desire into a more effective ball-winning threat by making him more clever in his challenges and reading his opponents better. Tactically, Leipzig play in their customary 4-2-2-2, and Szoboszlai features as a right-sided attacking midfielder with the freedom to cut inside and operate in the half spaces or in the 10 region. He has at times also featured on the left. For Hungary, plays as a left inside forward in a 3-4-3 with the freedom to roam anywhere he wants, but generally he remains in the left half space and drifts out onto the flank and even deeper positions if need be to help progress the game for the Hungarians. Which begs the question, where will he fit into Liverpool? Now, there's been much talk about Liverpool shifting to this 3-2-2-3 shape, and if that's the case, it seems highly likely that Szoboszlai plays in an inside right role similar to his role for Leipzig. And what he would bring is crossing out on the right side when Salah cuts in, and if Trent is in an underlap position, and if Trent has pulled out wide, he can help assist Salah in those inside channel areas. Now, the concern I have is that if Lavia arrives and if he takes Fabinho's spot and all else remains the same, Liverpool lack a defensive organiser in that midfield, and they're going to be pretty easy to play through in negative transition. Now, where would I play Szoboszlai to maximise his potential? Well, in truth, I think he needs to be used more like his Hungary version rather than the limited role he enjoys at Leipzig. For Hungary, he feels like a generational game changer, the heartbeat of the side. For Leipzig, he feels a bit like a Pogba at Juve, where he's an excellent player, but not someone who's going to redefine an elite football club. So for me, the best role for him is a number 10 role where he can drift across the pitch, all action attacking midfielder. Imagine Gerrard behind Torres, and that's the sort of way I'd want him to be used. So how do we create a shape where that's possible? I think a 3-4-3 diamond would probably be able to enable that. The issue is Trent and McAllister and this signing of Lavia. They're not natural fits with each other out of possession. In possession, less of an issue. You could have Lavia sitting, Trent to the right, Mac to the left, and Szoboszlai at number 10. So it looks like a treat in possession, creativity from all angles, all positions. Off the ball though, would Trent and Mac be able to cover ground quickly enough to protect the rather defensively inept, well, inept is a strong word, weak and inexperienced Lavia, and a creaking rearguard which seems to have a non-prime version of Van Dijk. So, in my opinion, replacing one of Trent or Mac with a Rice Caicedo type of presence, the midfield unit would have looked more balanced. In conclusion, is Szoboszlai the heir to Florian Albert? I don't think he's a Ballon d'Or winning talent, but he's the best Hungarian player since Albert by a country mile, and a player who's built so well technically, physically, that it's hard to see how Liverpool can cock this up to the degree where it's seen as a waste of money. I believe for Liverpool to extract his full potential, he has to be used as a paradigm shift type of signing and build the team around him, rather than how Leipzig use him as an icing on the cake. I think, in my opinion, Red Bull, despite having tremendous talents, have not maximised them to the point where they've been genuine threats for the big titles. I think Liverpool have landed a gem here, and I think they need to lay down the red carpet and use him to inject some life into a team that's been flailing last season. Use him in a niche tactical role to perform certain movements like a Mason Mount will limit him and limit the amount by which Liverpool can improve. I think he's got the potential to be a generational talent. He's got a very high bottom level, and I think it'd be a disappointment if this guy can't hit a world-class level by the end of his career. Few players are as well-rounded as this, and whilst I don't think anything outside his long shooting feels intergenerational, I just think he's a really solid footballer who breathes new life into this Liverpool project. Whether he reaches his full potential under Klopp remains to be seen, but Liverpool fans have a genuine right to be excited for this player in the long term.
Spare for Guardiola, joy for Mourinho.